On the morning of November 11th, 2012, paradise cracked open. In Belize, on a quiet island better known for turquoise water and postcard sunsets than violent crime, a housekeeper walked into a home and found a body lying in blood. The victim was Gregory Fall, an American expatriate. He had been shot in the head, execution style, one clean bullet to the back of the skull. Within hours, police had a name. Not a gang member, not a cartel enforcer, not some unknown drifter hiding in the jungle. Their prime suspect was John McAfee, the eccentric tech millionaire whose antivirus software had once protected computers across the globe. But when police arrived to question him, McAfee had already vanished. He didn't wait to explain. He didn't stay to defend himself. He disappeared. And from that moment on, the case stopped being just a murder investigation. It became something far stranger. A globe-spanning chase involving border escapes, bribery, fake medical emergencies, secret hideouts, armed yachts, international warrants, and a man who seemed to treat law enforcement like an audience. This was not just the story of a fugitive. It was the story of a man who spent years making governments look clumsy, slow, and powerless, and who turned his own downfall into one last spectacle. The real question is not just how John McAfee ran. The question is, how did he keep getting away with it? Before the manhunt, there was the myth. Long before he became an international fugitive, John McAfee was already living like someone who believed ordinary rules were for other people. In the late 1980s, the personal computer revolution was exploding. Homes and offices were filling with machines, and along with them came a new kind of invisible threat: computer viruses. Most people didn't understand them. Businesses feared them, and John McAfee saw what few others did. Fear itself could become a market. He created one of the earliest antivirus products at exactly the right moment. His software promised detection, safety, control. Companies were terrified of losing data, money, and credibility. McAfee didn't just sell them a tool. He sold them reassurance. The timing was perfect. His company grew at breakneck speed. Major corporations signed on. Revenue soared. In a few short years, he went from programmer to millionaire, from obscure engineer to a recognized name in the tech world. But the rise revealed something dangerous about him. John McAfee loved chaos more than stability. He liked the thrill of the hunt, not the boredom of maintaining an empire. Boardrooms irritated him. Corporate structure suffocated him. Investors, regulators, and polished executives represented exactly the kind of system he hated. He had the mind to build something monumental, but he did not have the temperament to live quietly inside it. So eventually, he walked away. He cashed out, made a fortune, and left behind a company carrying his name. To most people, that kind of exit would have been the beginning of a comfortable billionaire retirement. For John McAfee, it was the beginning of something much darker. From tech titan to wild exile. After leaving the company, McAfee drifted through wealth the way some men drift through weather. He chased adventure, mysticism, risk, stimulation. He explored yoga, alternative lifestyles, flying, philosophy, exotic living, anything that promised intensity. But over time, even freedom started to feel dull. Then came the 2008 financial crash. Much of his wealth evaporated. The man who had once possessed nine-figure wealth suddenly found himself stripped of the illusion that money alone made him untouchable. Instead of humbling him, the loss seemed to push him further into distrust. He became more openly hostile toward governments, taxes, institutions, and authority itself. In his worldview, the state wasn't there to protect people. It was there to own them, cage them, bleed them slowly while calling it law. So in 2009, he did what men like John McAfee always do when they feel cornered by civilization. He left. He moved to Belize. To him, Belize looked like an escape hatch. No suffocating bureaucracy, no American pressure, no conventional expectations, just tropical beauty, distance from authority, and the illusion of absolute autonomy. He bought a beachfront home, then a jungle compound. He hired armed security, surrounded himself with local muscle, loyalists, and people dependent on his money. He spoke grandly about researching natural antibiotics using jungle plants. He built labs, started businesses, made claims about scientific breakthroughs. But around those claims, something more troubling took shape. Young girlfriends, heavy weapons, unpredictable behavior, bonfire parties, power plays, fear, rumors. To some people, he looked like a brilliant eccentric. To others, he looked like a rich foreigner slowly unraveling in public. The deeper he settled into Belize, the more he seemed to stop behaving like a businessman and start acting like a self-appointed ruler of his own tiny kingdom. And like many men who build private kingdoms, he began to believe enemies were everywhere. the raid that changed everything. In April 2012, Belizean authorities raided his compound. To McAfee, it wasn't just a police action, it was a declaration of war. Officers in tactical gear stormed the property. Weapons were drawn. People were lined up. Dogs charged. At least one of the animals was shot. The place was searched for hours. Guns, chemicals, and strange materials were seized. Yet despite the dramatic operation, authorities did not uncover the kind of criminal jackpot the spectacle seemed to promise. But facts mattered less than perception. And John McAfee's perception was now locked in. He became convinced that government forces wanted him dead. After the raid, whatever paranoia he had before intensified into full operational behavior. He slept armed. He installed cameras and tripwires. He talked about corrupt police, assassination plots, cartels, hidden enemies. Whether those fears were justified, exaggerated, or completely delusional almost stopped mattering. What mattered was that he believed them. And when a man with money, weapons, influence, and a collapsing trust in reality starts living like he's under siege, it rarely ends quietly. At the same time, a more personal conflict was boiling just a short distance away. The neighbor problem. John McAfee had a neighbor named Gregory Fall, and the two men did not get along. Fall had come to Belize for peace, like many expatriates do. But peace is hard to enjoy when your neighbor lives like a paranoid warlord. McAfee's dogs reportedly roamed freely, barked through the night, and created ongoing tension. Complaints were made. Tempers rose. Direct warnings were exchanged. Then the situation turned vicious. One night, several of McAfee's dogs were poisoned. Animals he relied on for security collapsed and died. For him, it wasn't just a loss. It was a message. Someone had crossed the line. Whether he knew who was responsible, suspected who was responsible, or simply needed someone to blame, the timing that followed would become impossible to ignore. The dogs died. A day later, Gregory Fall was shot dead. And when police came looking for McAfee, he was gone. That decision, to flee immediately, would forever define how the world saw him. Maybe he was terrified. Maybe he believed he would be killed if arrested. Maybe he was guilty. Maybe he simply knew that once the state grabs hold of you, the truth becomes secondary. Whatever the reason, by running, he transformed suspicion into mythology. Buried alive to stay free. What happened next sounded less like real life, and more like a scene from a feverish thriller. McAfee later claimed that while authorities searched for him, he hid by burying himself in sand, with only a breathing tube allowing him to stay alive beneath the surface. Whether embellished or not, the image was unforgettable. A 67-year-old millionaire hiding underground like prey while police hunted above him. Belizean authorities launched searches, roadblocks, sweeps, patrols. But McAfee was already moving through a hidden network of safe houses and allies. He was not improvising as badly as people expected. He had clearly thought about this possibility before. That says something important about him. Men who think the world is coming for them often prepare for that day long before anyone else believes it's real. For several days, he slipped through Belize like smoke. Jungle hideouts, fishing routes, friendly contacts, improvised shelters, constant motion. But there was no future for him inside Belize. If he wanted to stay free, he needed to get out of the country entirely. So he did. Escaped to Guatemala, and the fatal ego mistake. Under cover of darkness, McAfee arranged passage by boat out of Belize and into Guatemala. No clean paperwork, no official route, no legal comfort, just cash, secrecy, and desperation. It worked. He reached Guatemala. For a moment, he had distance, breathing room, a temporary illusion of safety. And that's when he made one of the most absurd mistakes of his entire life. Instead of staying invisible, he reached out to the press. This was classic McAfee. He didn't just want to escape the story. He wanted to control it. He wanted to narrate his own legend while he was still inside it. So he connected with journalists, posed for photos, spoke dramatically, and leaned into the spectacle of being the world's most eccentric wanted man. It was a disastrous act of vanity, because the photos published from his supposed hideout contained location metadata. His own publicity helped expose him. Within hours, online sleuths and authorities knew where he was. A man who had successfully slipped through a murder investigation, evaded Belizean authorities, and crossed an international border without being caught was undone by the simplest modern trap imaginable: digital breadcrumbs. Soon after, Guatemalan police moved in and arrested him. At last, it seemed the chase was over. It wasn't. The fake heart attack, now trapped in Guatemala and facing deportation, McAfee believed sending him back to Belize would be a death sentence. Whether he truly feared execution, brutal imprisonment, or just the total collapse of his freedom, he knew he needed time. So he did what John McAfee often did best. He performed. While in detention, he appeared to collapse from serious cardiac distress. Reports spread that he had suffered heart trouble. He was rushed to a hospital. Cameras rolled. The world watched. Deportation was delayed. Later, McAfee openly suggested the whole thing had been staged. A fake medical emergency. A deliberate act. A manipulation designed to jam the machinery of extradition long enough for lawyers and bureaucracy to create a new route. And somehow, against the odds, it worked. Instead of being returned to Belize, McAfee was eventually sent back to the United States. He had turned what looked like an inevitable surrender into a bizarre kind of strategic victory. He stepped off a plane in Miami, not in handcuffs headed for murder charges, but as a free man under the eyes of astonished cameras. For a moment, it looked like he had beaten the system. Again, back in America, but never at rest. Most people would have taken that second chance and disappeared in a private life. John McAfee did the opposite. Back in the United States, he leaned harder in a public performance. He married, reinvented himself, released bizarre videos, mocked the antivirus software that still carried his name, dabbled in politics, positioned himself as an anti-establishment prophet, chased attention the way other men chase oxygen. Eventually, he found a new stage: cryptocurrency. It was the perfect ecosystem for someone like him. Wild, unregulated, ideological, full of believers and speculators. McAfee embraced it with theatrical enthusiasm. He made predictions, promoted coins, attacked regulators, and cultivated an image somewhere between outlaw genius and anarchist showman. But while he was playing prophet online, another danger was closing in quietly: the IRS. McAfee had allegedly gone years without filing tax returns or paying federal taxes. He called taxation theft. He spoke as if laws were optional if you were bold enough to reject them. But the U.S. government has a long memory, and, unlike social media critics, it does not get bored. By 2019, federal prosecutors had secretly indicted him on tax-related charges. And when he learned the net was tightening, he ran again. The yacht years. This time, he didn't vanish into a jungle. He took to the sea. McAfee lived aboard a yacht with his wife, weapons, technology, cash, and constant internet access. It was the perfect escape platform for a man who no longer trusted airports, borders, or passport control. The ocean gave him movement. Movement gave him survival. What followed was one of the strangest fugitive chapters in modern memory. He bounced from place to place: the Caribbean, island harbors, foreign coasts, rumor-soaked locations that were sometimes real and sometimes deliberate misdirection. He used encrypted communications. He taunted authorities online. Sometimes he appeared to reveal his exact whereabouts. Sometimes those clues seemed designed to waste investigators' time. That was part of his strategy. Visibility can be a shield if you use it correctly. Authorities prefer quiet arrests. McAfee made quiet impossible. Every post, every stunt, every live interview turned legal pursuit in a public theater. He wasn't hiding in silence. He was hiding in noise. At one point, he was detained in the Dominican Republic over firearms on his yacht. It looked serious. It looked final. Then he got out. Again. Each time officials got close, he managed to turn custody into delay, delay into release, and release into a fresh escape. Whether by negotiation, influence, legal loopholes, or sheer exhaustion on the part of governments who wanted no part of the circus, he kept slipping through. But even legends were down. By 2020, after years of motion, threat, bravado, and instability, the pace changed. He stopped drifting. He settled, briefly, in Spain. That decision would end everything. Barcelona, the net finally closes. In October 2020, John McAfee was arrested in Spain at the request of the United States. No dramatic jungle escape. No boat under moonlight. No performance worthy of tabloids. Just an airport. A flag passport. Officers moving in. After years of evasion, of international headlines, of mocking governments from behind screens and from the decks of yachts, the run was over. He was taken into custody in Barcelona and jailed while extradition proceedings moved forward. U.S. authorities were no longer just pursuing tax charges. Additional allegations involving cryptocurrency fraud also darkened the case against him. McAfee, now in his mid-70s, understood the gravity of what was happening. This was not a temporary inconvenience. This was not Belize. This was not Guatemala. This was not some weak hand he could bluff out of existence. If extradited to the United States, he likely faced years of court battles and the possibility of dying behind bars. And for a man who had built his identity around refusing control, that future may have been intolerable. The last cell. In prison in Spain, John McAfee remained publicly defiant. Through messages and his legal team, he continued to suggest that powerful forces were after him. He hinted darkly that if anything happened to him, it should not be accepted at face value. Like everything else in his life, he wrapped even his fear in theater. His supporters believed him. His critics dismissed it as another performance. Either way, the shadow of conspiracy began gathering before the end even arrived. Then came June 23, 2021. A Spanish court approved his extradition to the United States. Within hours, John McAfee was found dead in his cell. The official ruling was suicide by hanging. He was 75 years old. That should have ended the story. But with John McAfee, nothing ever ended cleanly. Almost immediately, competing narratives exploded. Some insisted he had been silenced. Others argued this was the final act of a man determined never to surrender on anyone else's terms. His wife publicly questioned the official account. Online communities turned his death into another maze of suspicion, symbolism, and myth. Even in death, McAfee refused simplicity. His body remained caught in legal and procedural complications. His reputation remained suspended between genius and madness, between victim and manipulator, between hunted man and self-created monster. And maybe that is the only ending that ever fit him. Why John McAfee still fascinates people. What makes this story so compelling is not just the crime, the flight, or the international intrigue. It's the contradiction at the center of the man. John McAfee made his fortune selling protection, yet spent the rest of his life convinced he was under attack. He built a product meant to create security, yet lived as if safety itself were an illusion. He became rich through systems, then dedicated himself to mocking, escaping, and defying those same systems. He was brilliant, but unstable, charismatic, but dangerous, funny but frightening, calculated, yet deeply chaotic. That is why people still can't look away. Because his life plays like a warning and a dare at the same time. It is the story of what happens when intelligence is mixed with ego, freedom with paranoia, money with isolation, and performance with real-world consequences. It is the story of a man who turned his own existence into an endless act of resistance, until there was nowhere left to run. And maybe that's the darkest truth in all of this. For years, John McAfee looked unstoppable not because he was stronger than governments, but because he understood something many fugitives never do. In the modern world, attention can be weaponized. He used headlines as armor. He used absurdity as camouflage. He made himself so unpredictable that every institution pursuing him had to chase not only a man, but a myth. But myths are hard to imprison, and men are easier to break than legends. In the end, the governments did catch him, just not in the way the story seemed to promise. Final thought. John McAfee did not live like a normal criminal, a normal businessman, or a normal public figure. He lived like a man trying to outrun the idea of control itself. That's what made his story so wild. Not just the escapes, the boats, the border crossings, or the fake medical scare, but the fact that every chapter felt like it was being written by someone who believed reality was negotiable. For a long time, he made that belief look true, until the final door closed. And even then, he left behind enough confusion, suspicion, and spectacle to keep the world arguing about him long after he was gone. That may be the most John McAfee ending possible. A man who spent his life refusing capture, became even harder to pin down after death.